Thank you.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This morning, the state and county announced $250 million for the migrant response, but they say there's a $70 million or so gap in what's needed. Does the city have plans to offer that $70 million? If so, what would that look like?
Yeah. So as you know, I've made a very strong commitment. Well, maybe you don't know. I shouldn't assume that. I've made an incredible commitment to this mission. From the first major vote that I oversaw as mayor of the city of Chicago, $51 million. That was a punt from the previous city council. And then we put another $150 million into the budget for this fiscal year, something that the previous city council did not do. They didn't budget for the last year. And then we went back again for a third time to replace government operations funds with a $95 million. On top of that, you know, we've had 35,000 plus people come to the city of Chicago seeking asylum, of which we had at one point the highest 15,000 people that the city of Chicago was solely responsible for sheltering, 5,700 children that we are educating, providing health screenings. I've demonstrated that I'm very much committed to this mission, you know, and there's an entire operation around how this mission is carried out. And so I'm grateful of the work from the state as well as from the county and the work that they have done and what they are committed to continuing to do. And there's an entire operational aspect to this mission that I have to have full consideration of, because I'm, again, solely responsible for sheltering people. We're solely responsible for educating people. These are, you know, big tasks. And as you know, from the very beginning, since I've taken office, we've decompressed police stations, the airport. There's a lot of work that's involved here. And the city of Chicago has the bulk of that responsibility. And grateful that we have partners like the state of Illinois that have helped resettle families. The county has committed to ramping up its healthcare services at each of our sites, of which 28 of them, I'm running all of them. And we're going to continue our work to make sure that this mission is fulfilled.
But Mayor, that doesn't answer the question that there's a $70 million gap. Why did you engage with the state and the county and then refuse to commit?
So I'm engaging with the county and the states because that's what leaders do. I've made a commitment to collaborating with people. There are a lot of things to consider in this entire operation. It's not just financial resources. It's about beds, right? And who ultimately is going to be responsible for the temporary shelter. I remember the state of Illinois committed to 2,000 beds back in November. And we are still working out and fleshing out the details around that, because this is a very comprehensive approach. So this is not about my commitment. If anybody questions I'll say it like this: I don't believe anybody in Chicago is questioning my commitment to this mission.
Well, they are, because you didn't put in the $70 million that you promised you would give them at that meeting and then walked away from it.
Were you at that meeting? So you're making an assertion that I made a promise. Were you at that meeting? So $150 million in my budget, $51 million from the first vote that I oversaw when I became mayor, another $95 million to make sure we close out this last fiscal year. So whatever conclusion you're coming to, maybe I shouldn't speak to whatever conclusion you're coming to. All I'm saying is that no one in this city, let's make it broader, no one in the state of Illinois in this country is questioning Mayor Brandon Johnson's commitment to this mission. No one is. 28 shelters, 5,700 children that we're educating, 3 times before the city council to get the resources that were needed to make sure that we are fulfilling this mission. Health screenings, collaborating with mayors around the region and the country, passing an ordinance that other states are now modeling so that we can bring some structure to this operation. So I'm committed to this mission, as I've been. And I'm grateful that we have partners at the state level and the county level who are also committed to this mission. And it's a mission of care, as well as a mission that requires a real holistic response to this crisis. And I'm grateful that we have 2 leaders at the state and the county level that are committed to it as well.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
My question is about the first Police District Council, which has been operating with only 2 district councilors since last May. In November, you rejected the CCPSA's recommendation of Marcel Bright, and your office asked the CCPSA to put one of the other 2 initial names forward, which they did. It's now been 3+ months since then. Why has there been a delay in making that nomination, and when do you expect to do so? So
I've made a recommendation, and we want to get it right. Look, I know that the people have gotten maybe accustomed to things being done in a very rash way. Like when you shut down 50 schools overnight, shut down mental health clinics, or shut down, hold on, I got you, man. You've asked your question. And what I'm simply saying is that I know that people have become accustomed with decisions being made in a way that, quite frankly, have been sloppy. We've hurried up to pass deals for parking meters and skyways and public housing. Where has that gotten us? So you have a thoughtful mayor. That's what you have. And so there's a recommendation that has been provided, and so now we're moving forward.
When will you move forward with that?
I've already made my recommendation. Yep, so you'll see that shortly. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you heard the criticism.
Thank you, Chicago.
Hi, Mayor. Could we return to the migrant issue?
Of course.
This is the second time that you and the governor's office seem to disagree on how things are going to play out to care for the situation. This time specifically, are you saying the governor's staff is lying when they say you committed to $70 million? It's very confusing to figure out why would they say after multiple meetings the city committed to $70 million and now the city says no.
Well, I don't know where the disagreement really exists here. The commitment to the mission is what we're all in agreement with. And what I've said repeatedly is that there's an entire operation that must be considered here. How we educate, how we provide.
But they have numbers. Why are those numbers not jibing with what you're saying? 70 million. I mean, were you in the meeting or was somebody else in the meeting? What's the disconnect?
There is no disconnect. And yes, I was in the meeting. There are a number of matters that need to be worked through. It's not just about financial resources. As I've said before, right now the city of Chicago is solely responsible for providing emergency temporary shelter. We're solely responsible for that. We're solely responsible for feeding migrants, staffing. I've renegotiated multiple times to ensure that the staffing model is made up of individuals who are local. So just,
what about looking forward? All this money.
How about you give me an opportunity to answer the question, okay? Just be patient with me. It's a virtue. There's 9 of them, by the way. I think I said 7. There are 9 fruits of the Spirit and 9 gifts of the Holy Spirit. So my pastor challenged me on that. So in order for us to move forward, we have to understand what we're doing right now. That's called smart leadership. Now, I know people just want to rush to judgment. I get that. But I have the responsibility to make sure that we build an operation that is built around people's humanity. And that's why I'm speaking specifically about how we house migrants, a temporary emergency shelter. Remember the state made a commitment to 2,000 beds back in November. Do you remember that?
Yes.
All right. So all of those details are still being worked through. It's not just simply about finding financial resources. It's about building an entire operation. For the first time in the history of the world, a local municipality has been asked to establish, build, maintain, and operate a migrant resettlement. That has never happened. And so here's what we've learned over the course of my first 10 months in office, that you have to feed, you have to temporarily house, you have to provide health care, you have to educate, transportation, resettle. This is an entire operation.
Did they jump the gun by issuing this press release?
Look, the state of Illinois, as well as Cook County, made a commitment. And I'm grateful to have their partnership. That's a good thing, you all. The state of Illinois, Cook County, the city of Chicago, all working together to respond to this international crisis that, quite frankly, everybody knows is a federal responsibility. And so has it placed some stress on our local municipalities? Of course it has. But this is not something that has broken our spirit. It hasn't. And so we're going to continue to work with every single level of government, including the federal government, because they are solely responsible for this. This is not just simply about what the state does, the county does, or the city does. This is about who should be doing what. And the federal government continues to sit on their hands while democratic cities are being overwhelmed because someone is using people as leverage. And we all know who that person is.
Mayor, I hate to continue to pound on this issue, but you're committed to the mission. You've said that over and over again, but the mission requires money to make it happen. There's $71 million out there that still needs to be covered by the city. Is the city going to fund that money to do your part of the mission?
So I'm going to continue to do my part of the mission. I am.
But we're talking about the money, Mayor. Can you please just answer the issue whether there is going to be 71 committed by the city to cover the city's part of the mission, or are you saying, no, the Fed's got to cover that?
$51 million I went before the
Mayor, we heard that. Can you please answer the question? Well, I'm asking a question that I'm not getting an answer for.
Well,
I'd like to, if we could get an answer to whether 71 million will be committed by the city for this part of the mission after the state and the county committed theirs, yes or no?
So I've appropriated $51 million from the very beginning. I took that first vote. No one had to stand next to me. I did it. I then appropriated another $150 million and then went back again for a third time for $95 million. There's an entire operation that we have to consider here. Now, look, I know you want to have a petite form of a debate, but there's a broader context here. The broader context requires us to see the full operation in its totality, and that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. I'm also going to ask about the migrant crisis, but also touch on Heather's reporting as well. So you have about $400 million left in ARPA funds. I know that the city has said previously that you don't plan on spending any of that additional money on the migrant crisis like you did with that $95 million. But I mean, again, why not just go ahead and spend that money on the migrant crisis now? Like, is there a political debate within City Hall around doing that?
We have not debated how the rest of the ARPA dollars should be spent. What we have discussed, however, is that the ARPA dollars have an opportunity to reach communities that have been historically disinvested in. And that's what my commitment is with the ARPA.
So what does that mean exactly? Because I feel like what you're alluding to is maybe the fight that's gone on in city council, which is that communities that have historically, not been invested in have been Chicago's existing Black and brown communities. And it feels like maybe once again, this is pitting funding against Chicago's existing Black community and these new migrants who are coming in.
Yeah. What the pandemic did, it exposed us. It exposed the failures of government. And so, I do know that there are some individuals that feed off of the divisive nature of politics. But ensuring that ARPA dollars get to the neighborhoods that have been historically denied access to housing, access to good paying jobs, that's important to me. And it's important to the people of Chicago. And I'm going to work hard like I've done these first 10 months to ensure that the dollars reach the neighborhoods.
And so, again, just to be clear, you have absolutely no plans to use any more ARPA money to aid this crisis right now.
To be absolutely clear, the ARPA dollars were designed and set up to get to the neighborhoods. And I'm going to work very hard to ensure that happens.
That's not like yes or no on that, though.
So again, so then you can draw your own conclusions there. Look, if you want a very simplistic form of government, perhaps that's a place for student council in third grade. For the city of Chicago, with all of the complexities that we deal with every single day, I've said repeatedly that the dollars must go to the neighborhoods. And that's what I've done as a Cook County Commissioner. That's what we're working towards as we set up more opportunities for those dollars to actually reach the community.
Hey, Mayor, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Glad to hear that. I just simply want to ask, does the $70 million account for people that are going to be coming up into the DNC? And where is that $70 million going to come from? Do you know?
So I actually I appreciate the framing of that question. I do. It's a good question. So right now we have just under 13,000 people in shelter that the city of Chicago is solely responsible for. We actually don't know how many more buses are going to come as we lead up to the DNC. That's the type of sophistication that I was hoping that people would understand. That to talk about a single number without fully knowing all of the complexities that relate to this mission is, it's short-sighted. Now, again, we can make projections, right? That's not unreasonable. And last summer, there were 30 buses coming a day. The discussions that we have had between the state and the county have been centered around providing temporary shelter for a smaller number than I'm currently responsible for right now. So there could be a situation where whatever number that is being floated right now, that may not be enough. That's the reality here. You have a governor in the state of Texas that is determined to cause harm. And so I appreciate the frame of the question because we have to consider the full operation. And right now, that has not been fully determined.
And then just a follow-up to that, I know that lately there's been fewer people who are in city shelter as people move out, which is a good thing. Is there ever going to be a reconsideration of maybe consolidating some of those shelters to save money in the long run?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, Mayor. Of that state.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Of the state and county funding, the state said the $102 million would be proposed in the governor's fiscal year 2025 budget proposal. You know, what will the city do until then? Is the city dollars currently budgeted? Is that enough to last the city at least through July, or do you anticipate funding will run out before then?
Well, as it stands, I think everyone has reported on the number that I've made available of what we're spending per day. At the current rate, the $150 million that we've appropriated, the city of Chicago alone will have a difficult time responding to this crisis in the event, and in all likelihood, the event that we don't get a comprehensive immigration reform package that provides more support at the border, that if the governor of Texas continues his path of destruction, that is going to be an incredible burden for the city of Chicago. And so you're absolutely right to raise that. And, you know, again, my responsibility at this point is to do our very best with the resources that we have to continue to provide this operation and this mission with a real humanitarian approach. And we do need the federal government to do more. We do. And again, I'm grateful that the state of Illinois and the county are going back, well, at least in the case of President Preckwinkle, going back to her body. I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate that the governor is willing now to go to his body directly. But, you know, our conversations are not over. We're going to continue to have conversations so that we meet this moment.